Joining the line right now, by another very special guest, Eddie Gallagher. He's a retired Navy SEAL who went through absolute hell there, where the deep state was coming after him repeatedly. We covered his case repeatedly. He's now the founder and a director of the Pipehitter Foundation, which is just passing its third anniversary. It's a group that is out there supporting people who are going through law enforcement officers, military officials, etc., who are going through very similar things to what he went through during his time as a Navy SEAL. So I wanted to have him on to talk about this. Eddie Gallagher, thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate you supporting the Pipehitter Foundation.
Yeah, so talk to us. What is the Pipehitter Foundation? What do you guys do? What is it as an organization? What are some of the major cases you're involved with?
Yeah, sure. So the Pipehitter Foundation is a nonprofit that my wife and I founded after obviously going through the nightmare that we did at the end of my career. And what we do is we support active duty military, law enforcement, and first responders. If they are being unjustly accused for doing their job, we step in. We provide emergency relief aid to their families as they're going through that time of turmoil. We also raise money for their legal defense, and then we will advocate for them if need be. And I'm proud to say that in the 3 years that we've been running, we have a 100% success rate so far. So that's due to the amount of work that our board puts in.
Yeah, so what we've seen is across the board, especially as the left has tried to defund the police across the country, we've been seeing the weaponization of law enforcement by Soros-funded district attorneys. We're seeing the woke, leftists take over formal elements of our military. We're seeing the cases of this type of thing intensify, right? So talk to us about if there's a police officer out there, and there's a lot of cops that listen to this show. I know that from around the country. I hear from some of them. I'm friends with a lot of them. There's a lot of veterans. There's a lot of active duty military that listen to this show. If somebody's getting unjustly accused, what do they do, right? So if somebody's getting accused of something or brought through, the ringer, what's your recommendation to that person? Where do they go? What do they do? Who do they call? Because it's a really tough thing to go through. I'm sure you could speak to that from personal experience, but what does the law enforcement officer or military official or some that's going through the ringer, what do they do? What's their first call? Walk us through that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So obviously, for active duty military and even law enforcement, we're raised in that system and told to trust the system, especially when we're being accused of something. A lot of the times, your command will be like, just sit tight, trust the system, this will be over with. Do not wait. What we say, as soon as you have an inkling that you're under investigation, all you have to do is go on the pipehitterfoundation.org, fill out a grant. The board convenes twice a month. We look at all the grants, and then we give a thumbs up or thumbs down on who we're going to support. But when you fill out that grant, we would ask that you be as thorough as possible with what's going on. And then the most important thing, and like I said in the beginning, is you fill it out as soon as you feel like something's going on. If something doesn't happen, that's great. At least you still have that grant filled out, but what we see a lot of times is people fill out those grants when it's almost too late, when they're being, they've been accused and they've been found guilty, or they're already wrapped up in the process. That doesn't mean that we will not step in and help, but that just puts, it's like an uphill battle at that point. So I ask people, if you do feel like you're getting charged or being investigated, fill out those grants as soon as possible. We also have advisors on our board who will talk to your lawyers, see what their plan is, and these are people that have been through the ringer themselves, so they know the game and they know how to get around it.
Right. Okay. So now, can you give us some examples of some of your cases? You mentioned 100% success rate. That's awesome. That's phenomenal. Give us some examples of some of the cases you guys have gotten involved in. How did it happen? What went down? How did you guys assist? How did you guys get these folks through this hellacious period of their lives?
Sure. So let me see. One example is Ben Darby. He was a law enforcement officer in Alabama. He was called to a scene where it was a man doing suicide by cop. He was in his house. Two law enforcement officers were already on the scene. They did not have it under control. He entered, and the guy that was doing suicide by cop had a gun, made a movement towards Officer Darby, and Officer Darby shot and killed him. Now, he was investigated by both his command and also another command and found not guilty. They found that he did everything right, but then a DA came in, and I'm sure it was a Soros-funded DA, and wanted to prosecute him. They did a kangaroo court during COVID where no one was allowed to sort of watch, and he was found guilty and put in prison for 25 years. And it wasn't until his wife, who is also a law enforcement officer, started speaking out on a podcast, and I actually heard one of her podcasts. So we reached out to her and asked if she would like our assistance, and she did. And what we did is we came in, we found out exactly what her lawyers were doing, what they did wrong, and we started raising money for her family, and then we were fighting for an appeal for Ben Darby. And I think he was in prison for about a year, and he was just released I'd say the beginning of this year. So he's out now. His fight is still not over. They are going to try and retry him again, but I think that his chances are looking really good.
Yeah, that's really unbelievable. And look, we see this every time where the media latches on as well, right? Like, so you see this media pressure campaign that then leads to eventually one of these leftist prosecutors doing something like this, right? Like, even though the formal investigations had cleared him, right? Like, I mean, how do you fight back against that side of things, right? Because yes, there's the official channels and whatnot, right? The formal investigations and the legal processes, etc. But there's also, I mean, for the average person out there, I mean, I'm used to it because I work in the media, right? Like, they can come after me all they want to, but somebody like yourself or somebody like Officer Darby here, right? Like, I mean, they're not used to media attention, right? Like, I mean, they don't know how to deal with a reporter, right? Like, they don't know how to deal with a television news camera stationed outside their house, or, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And, and that's, frankly, I know this because I work in the industry. A lot of people in the media try to take advantage of people's naivete, if you will. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that, like, because you don't deal with the media, you don't know how to talk to a reporter. They try to take advantage of it to hurt you guys, right? Like, so
Yeah.
how do you get through that side of things too?
So I'll give all that credit goes to my wife and brother. So when I was locked up, they stood up. My wife started an organic social media campaign, started putting out what was really going on with me. And then she ended up getting invited on certain news outlets. And just like you said, there are certain outlets that do take advantage and they want to spin the story their way. But my wife sort of paved the pathway on certain media outlets that we can trust. And then also we have connections in Congress, certain congressmen who are not scared to stand up and do the right thing, even when everybody else is saying that this person is guilty or not. So we use all those sources each time when we combat a case, and we do. We'll go on the media outlets for these individuals if they're not comfortable doing it themselves. But my wife has also a lot of the time these spouses of these individuals who are being accused. They don't know how to interact with the media and don't know how to stand up and fight for their husband, even though they want to. And my wife will help coach them to get them to do so. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, and look, I mean, again, not to dwell too much on your personal situation, and our audience is pretty familiar with it. I think we did have your wife on the show during the height of your situation, and thanks to President Trump and Secretary Esper, the defense secretary. I mean, your case was you're cleared, right? Like, and but the fact is that it was a nasty time there for a while. I remember it very closely, and I know we did a lot of stories about it. What's your advice, having gone through this yourself, Eddie Gallagher, to somebody who just did their job, showed whether it's a law enforcement officer showing up on the scene, like Officer Darby there, or somebody in uniform overseas for the United States, right? Like the servicemen, whether it's a Marine, airman, soldier, sailor,
Yeah.
what's your advice to anyone in that finds themselves in this situation? All of a sudden the media is digging in, all of a sudden the left is coming after them, the investigations are bearing down. I mean, it's overwhelming for the average person out there. I mean, it's yeah, by the way, there are multi-million dollar CEOs and whatnot that pay six, seven, or seven, or 6 or 7 figures to different people, specialty people out there. They're called crisis communications advisors, right? Like, to help them get through their situations like this, right? And they pay them that much annual salary on retainer, right? Like, the average person out there, they don't have a crisis communications advisor, right? Like, so what's your advice to that person that's going through that, like, when that starts?
Well, I can tell you, having gone through it myself, and yeah, you do have it feels like the whole world's coming down on you when, the media and the government and everybody's condemning you before you even had your day in court. My big advice, and I tell everyone, and this is what got me through, is, my faith in God, and I just would pray every day about it to give me the strength to get through. And then also surround yourself with the right people. At times when you feel betrayed by your command, and pretty much, feels like by the country, you want to sort of lash out and fight back. But the big key is to keep your mouth shut, surround yourself with the right people, and start coming up with a plan to combat it, and do it smartly. And don't let your emotions get in the way, even though it's hard to do at times. But that's why I say, put your faith in God and help Him guide you through it. But, also don't be scared to speak out and fight back and tell the truth. And then that's why we formed the Pipe Hitter Foundation, so we can be there to support these individuals and raise money for their legal defense. Because the one thing that we've learned going through it is the only rights that you have are the ones that you can afford. Other than that, if you do not have a good lawyer, you do not have somebody watching your back, then the system will take advantage of you, and they will cut corners at every turn, and take away. You don't have the rights that you think you do. So that is why we have the Pipe Hitter Foundation.
Right. And the last thing I would ask you here, Eddie, I've heard this term before, and I've taught, because the first time I heard the term pipe hitter was from Secretary Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, when he was, out there. I remember being with him in Iowa a couple years ago, and he was talking about pipe hitters, and I was like, what's a pipe hitter, right? Can you explain for us what a pipe hitter is? What is a pipe hitter?
Sure. When, my time in the military, and I've heard that term also used with law enforcement, usually if you don't know somebody and maybe they're coming to your unit or you're going to work with them, you're like, hey, what's up with this guy? If somebody's like, oh, he's a pipe hitter, that means that he is willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And that's somebody that you want by your side. And so those are the type of individuals that we want to support. People that love this country, that love their job, that love protecting others, and that will do anything it takes to do so. And so, those are our country's heroes, and that's who we want to stand behind.
Right. Eddie Gallagher from the Pipe Hitter Foundation. Sir, where can, first off, again, want to thank you for coming on here on Breitbart News Saturday. Where can people go to learn more about the Pipe Hitter Foundation, get involved if they so choose?
Sure. So we have the pipehitterfoundation.org. You can go on that website. You can see everybody that we support. You can see where all the money's going. We're a 501c3. We take about 5%. That's it from the money that is donated. And you can see each individual that we've supported, and you can still donate to those individuals on our site. We also have an Instagram page that you can go to that. And then also my wife and myself have our own Instagram that we correlates with Piper Foundation as well.
All right, Eddie Gallagher, I really want to thank you for joining us here, and thank you for doing everything that you're doing out there for the good folks that